Welcome back to the hourinvite podcast. My name is Nima.
My name is Aaron.
And today we're joined by a very special guest, Nurse Practitioner Jaines Andrades. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. Just for our viewers here, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
So like was said, my name is Jaines Andrades. I'm 29 years old. I'm a nurse practitioner now at a level 1 trauma in the trauma department. I started my nursing career in 2014 when I graduated from my bachelor's. I worked as a correctional nurse and then as substance abuse in a Suboxone clinic. In 2016, I decided to go back to NP school. So my specialty is in acute care. So I transitioned into the hospital as a nurse. I worked on a general medical floor and then a heart failure floor during school. And then, like I said, now that I've graduated, I work as a trauma NP.
So most recently, you got a recognition that I'm sure you're aware of on social media. You made a post on Facebook with 3-year badges. And actually, we found out about you through LinkedIn because someone had posted that picture also on LinkedIn also. So was there a motive behind you posting that? Why did you post that? And did you ever think like it would get the recognition that it did?
So I thought about that picture about a year ago. So in my second year of NP school, and I was like, oh shoot, like I think I still have my badge of when I was a custodian. I definitely have the badge as a nurse. So like it kind of would be cool to have all 3 badges. At that time, I didn't know that I was going to continue to work at Baystate, but I was like, if I get a job there, that would be nice. So it was like a thought like a year prior. So then when I actually posted the picture was when I got my badge for the NP. I was like, oh, shoot, let me go post that picture that I thought of. So I was, the IDs are in the middle console of my car. And I just took the picture and it really was I didn't put much thought to it like, oh, this is going to be viral. I just wanted to share this like cool experience with my family and friends, and just like, you know, you work really, really hard. So to like visually see the progress, not only am I like, you know, getting older in the pictures, but then like, you know, the positions are getting higher. So I just thought it was a cool representation of my growth. And then I posted the picture thinking like my friends would like it. My mom would say she was proud of me, and then that would be the end of it. Never in my wildest dreams did I think it would go viral. I don't know. I don't think of myself that highly for people to like, to be, I guess to serve as an inspiration for people. Like, I just feel like I kind of just did what I was supposed to. But when I did get all the feedback, I was completely humbled and blown away that people found my story inspiring.
So prior to this, did you ever have aspirations of becoming a healthcare provider?
No, actually. My dream since I was little, like since I could remember, was to become a lawyer. I just like, I can remember being 10 years old and watching court TV and like practicing a case, you know, like, you know, and I was dead set on that. When I went, I think it was about my senior year of high school, I was like, oh, shoot, I guess now is the time to actually look into this. And I just got really discouraged. I went to a more urban high school. So honestly and truly, they were just happy to get us through high school. And the college prep really wasn't there. And I just thought, I don't know where I'm going to get the money for this. I'm not smart enough for this. Forget it. Like, I'm not going to do it. And I became like completely discouraged to become a lawyer. And then I was like, oh, shoot, now I got to figure out what I'm actually going to do. Yeah. So one night I was in the hospital with my mom. We were in the emergency room, and one of the nurses in the ED started talking to me about nursing. Like, you know, he was just talking about like the versatility And then the thing that got me, he was like, oh, you could go to school for 2 years and make, whatever amount of money it was that he said. And I said, money in 2 years? Okay, sign me up. I'll do it. And then so I went to a community college first to make sure that I liked medicine or like science. Because again, like my focus had always been law. So I needed to make sure that I was even good at science and liked science. And I did. And then that's where nursing started.
So you had mentioned in the past that you got the janitor job to get your foot in the door and get to know like what nurses really do. Can you speak on the importance of like when you were in there, were you thinking about I'm going to go in there and start networking with people? Networking is very important in any profession, and who you know is, as we all know, like who you know means a lot. Were you having that mindset going in, like I'm going to try to network with these doctors, nurses, admin people, and try to get my foot in the door, or was that something that just came along?
That was something that just came along, honestly and truly. In this whole experience, I kind of find it funny that people give me so much credit for the decision that I made to be custodian to nurse practitioner when it was completely incidental. You know what I mean? Like it was, yes, I got the job to get my foot in the door and to be exposed to medicine, but also I was super young. Like I didn't know the impact that that could have. But I knew that it would be a good idea if I wanted to be in the medical field to be like anywhere in the medical field. And then over time, as I was there and I learned more in nursing school, then I started networking. But initially, my whole goal of getting the job was really to have a stable job to support myself through nursing school. And then I just knew it was a good stepping stone.
Awesome.
So what did you gain from being a janitor that you use now in your current career as a nurse practitioner?
Humility. Because I have seen or I have been able to go, let's say, from the bottom to the top. But I always remember that one day I was cleaning the same hallways that I walked, So like now that I'm a provider, that doesn't give me the space to be arrogant and like, put people down. It's an opportunity to show people that there's progress that can be made. So I just think that being a custodian just has always kept me very humble. And it showed me different sides of the hospital, So like as a provider now, let's say there's a person in the emergency room and I need them to be brought up to their room just for more continuity of care. The ED is very crazy. So I need to move a patient. Now that I've been a custodian, I understand that there's a human being that has to go and clean that room. And that same person may have another 8 rooms that people are like, you need to clean it now, you need to clean it now, you need to clean it now. So it taught me basically that it's beyond me. Like this is a healthcare team. And although like I'm the leader of the team, being a provider, it's still a team. There's multiple parts and I need to be aware of that.
Can you speak about any opportunities that came about ever since? I mean, thousands of doctors around the country know who you are and know your story. Have you been approached for any, positions, jobs, maybe possibly moving a job or maybe moving up? Like how has that been going?
So professionally, it hasn't really changed much because I am at the beginning of my career. So like when this happened, I had been at my job for a month. So like in terms of like professional stuff, I wouldn't change what I do. I've only been doing it for now 3 months. So, but I think like the opportunities that I've gotten to be on Good Morning America, the David Muir, ABC Tonight with David Muir, ABC World News with David Muir. I've gotten to be on the Spanish channel. I'm Puerto Rican, so like I got to be on the same TV show, the same morning show that I've watched since I was little. So opportunities like that. The governor of Massachusetts mentioned my story in his State of the Commonwealth address. So these are things that like I didn't even like I say it and I can't like comprehend still that that's about me. So I guess to answer your question, sorry. Professionally, there hasn't been much change. It's just been in in my life in general.
And you mentioned Good Morning America, but let's be real. The most important one is our invite.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes.
So I know you haven't really been in your role too long, but what is your favorite aspect of your career?
I think so. My position specifically, I like the versatility. So, as a trauma NP, okay, so I guess a day in the life. So I get to work anywhere between like 4:30 and 5:30 a.m. depending on how many patients there are. Blah blah blah. Look up my patients, get ready for the day, round with the team, which involves residents. So it's myself, a physician assistant, and then several residents that are on the team. We see the patients. Then we write notes and start developing the plans for the day, calling like case managers and families and blah, blah, blah. Then doing different tasks, whether it's changing a wound, dressing, or pulling a chest tube, things like that. And then the rest of the day is kind of filled with if there's any traumas that come in, or addressing the patient's needs. Oh, this person has pain, this person developed new shortness of breath, addressing those things. And then certain days a week I go outpatient. It's in the same hospital building, but it's considered outpatient, and see the patients for like follow-up. Once they have healed, gotten better, they come and see us. So I like that change. Like in the morning, it's like a group thing where we're all together talking about the patients, and then we kind of spread out to do the work. At any moment, you can get interrupted with a trauma. And then I have the outpatient portion. So I get to see the patient from when they come into the trauma bay to when they come back for follow-up. So that the ability to see the patient through the spectrum and the constant changing is what I love.
So as you mentioned earlier, in the hospital setting, it's teamwork from the custodian to the surgeon.
Mhm.
We're all a team. We're all working together. How's been your experience with the pharmacist? And what is your relationship with the pharmacist? And what do you have to say in regards to the profession and your profession and working together?
I think that now that I'm a provider, obviously I work with pharmacists a lot closer than I used to. And you guys are like geniuses. Like, I'm like,
I wish.
okay, geniuses. Because, the pharmacists pick up on things that, like, don't even cross my mind. Like, oh, hey, the patient had this reaction to this medication at this time. Do you want to do this instead of this? You can give them this, this, and this to prevent the reaction. It's just like, I didn't even, that just went completely over my head, or like the antibiotic stewardship. When we kind of get to the end of our road, we've tried this, this, and this. The pharmacists come in and say, well, you can do this regimen. And all of that is extremely helpful because I know a lot about the body, the medicines. I mean, I know enough to safely practice, but I couldn't do my job if it wasn't for the pharmacist. And maybe sometimes I'm really annoying because I ask a lot of questions,
Yeah. And what would you say your relationship is with the physicians?
So I work closely with the physicians. We have an attending. So we work with the attending every day, all day, because it being a team effort, the attending, he or she, they're the head honcho, they're the leader of the team. So you're always interacting with them to get the final clearance to do something. And then obviously they're the surgeon. So the surgeon needs to know about the patients he's going to do surgery, he or she are going to do surgery on. So we have like a really close relationship with our attendings. And my attendings, I have 7 of them, and they're incredible. I know sometimes surgeons get a bad rap, but I've been lucky that I have like 7 of the best surgeons ever. as my attendings.
So how has it been working during these times of the pandemic? And what message do you have for citizens as well as other healthcare providers?
So it has been, and it's crazy that it's almost been a year in terms of like since the lockdown first occurred in the United States, and I really started seeing changes at work. I think that what I have to say to other healthcare workers is just thank you. Like, I am in complete awe of the amount of like empathy and compassion and hard work that my fellow healthcare workers have displayed. Like, there's something that says like some people will say, "Oh, well, you signed up for this." And it's like, no, we didn't. None of us, when we went to school, were even, I guess I'll speak for myself. A global pandemic wasn't in the textbooks, you know what I mean? So I like none of us signed up for the level of pressure. And like I think the best part of medicine is that like 9 times out of 10 it's like very predictable, right? We have a bunch of algorithms to go by to help us decide what to do. There's an art to it, obviously, but there's a lot of science to it, very factual. And at that time when COVID started, we didn't have facts. We just tried this, and if it worked, okay. And you tried that, and if it didn't work, well, then we'll start, like we'll go back to square one. So I think healthcare workers in general, from like the CNAs, the nurses, aides, phlebotomists, pharmacists, doctors, nurses, everyone like really went above and beyond what we were called to do to help with this pandemic. I think that I wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for my coworkers, because nobody understands what it's like to be in a hospital, dealing with patients who are very sick, dealing with families of these patients. It's really tough. And I think to the citizens, I would just say, like, for anyone who has any doubt that this is real, like from people who, unfortunately have had to put people, in body bags because of this, and listen to families cry, and it's real. It is a real virus. It's out there and it's scary. And there's, over 400,000 people dead from this. It's not a joke, and I think just overall, COVID has taught me to kind of slow down and appreciate the little things, because one day I was planning my graduation and a trip over to Europe to celebrate graduating. And then the next day we were in a complete shutdown and I couldn't go to, McDonald's to grab a burger. So overall, this pandemic has taught me to appreciate things, and it's taught me how incredible the healthcare field is, and how incredible the people who do this work are.
And just as a follow-up, where do you think we're at as a country in terms of vaccine distribution? What do you think we can be doing better, doing worse, and also to make people, I guess, be more compliant to wearing masks? What do you think we can do as a country to make that happen?
I think that less arguing, just lead by example. I think if there's enough people that lead by example, because for the people who feel that this is fake, you arguing with them is not going to change their idea. Yeah. Obviously, we've been arguing with them for a year and they still have the same stance. So I think that just as healthcare workers, leading by example is the only thing that we can really do to make a change. That's why when I got my vaccine, I posted it online so that people who were maybe on the fence would see, okay, this is someone who I know, this is someone who I trust. She got the vaccine. She didn't turn into a zombie. We're okay. Things like that, just being leaders and leading by example, like posting your experiences so that people can see, because, sometimes these things seem very far away, right? Like there's over 400,000 people who have passed away from COVID. But if that doesn't affect you specifically, it's hard to like grasp the severity of it. So I think, again, like just leading by example, sharing our stories. Like, I'm not one to really express myself on Facebook, but have found it important to express myself and to share accurate knowledge, because there's so much information, misinformation out there. I found it very important to, share my experience, the hard days. Like today was a really hard day. I lost this patient, things like that. And as well as spreading accurate information. And I think that's all that we can do, because again, like to fight and to argue, it doesn't help. It's not going to change anyone's idea, but the more people are exposed to accurate and positive information, hopefully something will stick.
I'm gonna switch it up. We got real quick. I'm gonna bring it back. There's gonna be a balance on the show today.
Okay.
Has there been anyone that you've been able to connect with that has you've been shocked? You're like, wow, I just connected with this person. Has there been anyone that reached out, or you were able to connect with, that you were shocked? Being so new, you, as you said, you're a new nurse practitioner. You just started, so.
Do you mean because of this experience with
Yeah.
the post? Oh, yeah. I think like yesterday when I got a message that like the governor mentioned my story in his State of the Commonwealth address. Like that's the biggest talk that the governor gives in the whole year. Like it's and it just blows my mind. Yeah, that's I think I don't know if that's the most shocked, but that's what comes to mind right now. And then I think when I did an interview with the Spanish channel, there's this actress. Her name is Adamaris Lopez. She's Puerto Rican. She's been in novelas or soap operas since I was tiny. And she after I finished the interview, she addressed me. And that was incredible as well.
So talking about Puerto Rico, how has the Puerto Rican community been reacting to your story?
It's been great. Like, to look in the comments and see so many people like with the Puerto Rican flag. So many people notice that my Puerto Rican flag is on my ID. People telling me that like I'm a source of pride for Puerto Rico. It's been awesome. I've gotten a lot of comments and inboxes, DMs, Facebook messages of people who are Puerto Rican in support of me. So it's been really great.
A lot of mofongo.
Yeah, I wish. If there wasn't a pandemic, I think I would have gotten mofongo. But I can't present anywhere in person.
Yeah. I know your DMs are swole right now. But,
yeah.
I'm trying to be like you one day.
Yeah. Careful what you ask for.
True. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts the number of nurse practitioners will actually increase by 34% from 2021 to 2022. That's three times more than the national average. Why do you think there's such an immense amount of projected growth in the years to come in your profession?
Because of the need. There's research out there to say that, care given by nurse practitioners shows great outcomes. And the exact reason why they haven't been able to pinpoint it, it could be just because you're a nurse previous, so you're used to checking for medical errors, you're used to kind of being the safeguard. So you take those skills to becoming a nurse practitioner. And then so maybe you're, I don't want to say this wrong, maybe you're a bit safer because you've been on the receiving end of orders that were put in wrong, blah, blah, blah. So I think also there's such a need, like the baby boomers being now elderly, and they were like the biggest population or biggest generation out there. They're becoming the elderly, and it opens the space for providers in general. giving, and like I said, giving nurse practitioners the opportunity to fill those roles. And I think that nursing in general is kind of evolving, and with like millennials and Gen Zs and the way that these generations like behave, the role of a nurse practitioner is kind of more sought after maybe than the role of a bedside nurse. So maybe there's that aspect to it. And I just think that, you know, nurse practitioners kind of bring a different twist to medicine, since they already have, they've already practiced as a nurse. You know, it's not like a med student or a physician assistant, who, when they come out of school, they may or may not, you know, like they have some experience that's required due to their program, but like they haven't been a practicing person, where a nurse practitioner has. You know, they've held a license, they've been, you know, on the front line of patient care. So I just think that adds something different, that makes a nurse practitioner more, I don't want to be careful with my words here, maybe more desirable, or maybe an easier fit into the healthcare system. And then that turns into a higher demand for them.
Is there a specific situation or patient that has made you think deeply about your profession?
Oh, there's been so many. But I guess on the topic of COVID, the first patient I lost through the COVID pandemic was actually not a COVID patient. I worked on a heart failure floor, and this patient had a huge inferior MI. And the patient, she was in her late 80s, early 90s, and the prognosis was poor for her. The decisions were, the family was in talks of making her comfort measures and things like that. And at the time, the requirement for the hospital was no visitors unless the patients were CMO, you know, comfort measures. So her son said, okay, like I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do the whole CMO thing. It's just I need to talk to my siblings before making the final decision. Even though he was the healthcare proxy, he wanted to talk to his family. And unfortunately, in the time, it was about an hour that it took him to like talk to his family and get back to us, she passed away. With us beside her. And then like one of the last things she said was, "Where's my son?" And to me, that if there's one moment where I felt like, what's the word? I felt the impact that a nurse could have, or like the impact of the pandemic. Like I felt nursing and this pandemic clash, because we thankfully were in the room with her and she didn't pass away alone. But because of this pandemic, she didn't pass away with her family. So it was kind of like a double-edged sword moment for me. You know, like I was so glad that we were in the room so she didn't have to pass by herself. But then at the same time, so broken because this virus stopped her from passing with her family. So I think that was most recently one of those times where I really like thought about, you know, because it kind of, you know, made me question, can I do this? Mm-hmm. Can I, if this is what taking care of people during the pandemic means, can I do this? You know? Yeah.
Awesome.
So during this pandemic, obviously you still have a life, I hope. So how have your life outside of your career changed? How are you still being social? How are you staying active? And what advice do you have for people that may be going through the cabin fever, staying home, not being able to see people? What advice do you have for them?
Mm-hmm. I think you just have to make the best of whatever experience whenever you go through it. So a thing that I do to stay active, I like to work out. And when the pandemic started, I had just started like lifting weights. And it was something, you know, like I had always wanted to do. And then I built the courage up to do it. Go to the gym and be a girl and lift weights. And then so to stay active, little by little, I've developed my own home gym. Like I have weights and resistance bands and a pull-up bar. I have a bench on the way. So, like kind of modify. Just because I can't go to the gym doesn't mean that I can't be active. I've kind of dwindled down my social life to just seeing a certain group of friends. We're all healthcare workers. So kind of we're all exposed to COVID equally. So I've kind of dwindled it down to them. So then everyone else, I like FaceTime them, talk on the phone, things like that. But in person, I just stick with my friends that are healthcare workers and just try to take advantage of things like when it was warmer out, going out for walks, like running outside, having dinner outside with my friends, things like that, like to kind of try to be as normal as possible. But I mean, all of us have cabin fever. Like, we're all tired. But it's just like holding on a little bit longer. I think we're almost there. Yeah, just hold on because it's like life is in the balance. That's what, like you could go and, hang out in a bar, in a club, contract this virus, bring it home, and then something happened to grandma. So like keeping that in mind that like, yeah, we have cabin fever, but there's people's lives at stake to keep us like motivated or maybe disciplined to continue with the rules.
Like you said earlier, you got the custodian job to pay for your school, right? There was no intentions of you becoming a nurse or whatever from that. It was just you wanted to pay for school. You were a nurse in school. How do you feel about all these articles and everyone labeling the title like, from custodian to healthcare worker, like, putting that image, kind of making you be recognized as that rather than just recognizing that, you were just a hardworking student that had a goal, had a mission, and now she's successful in where she wanted to be rather than, putting that label on it.
Well, I think, anyone needs a good story. Like we all need like that clickbait thing, the thing that's going to make someone read the rest of the article or someone to watch the rest of the interview. But I think, so I don't take that personally, or I don't see an issue with it because I get it. Like they have to say what they have to say to get people in. But I think for me specifically, the second way you mentioned it, in terms of like, I'm just a person who was trying to succeed and trying to better herself and break cycles and move forward. That's the person I see myself as. That like custodian to nurse practitioner. I get it, but that's not how I see myself. I'm just someone who thankfully was able to find a career that I enjoy. And I was, lucky enough to find a means to pay for school. And, this was the route that I took, and thankfully it turned out well. But I don't think of myself like, oh, I was like, I've just been Jaines the whole time.
When looking back, if there's, young girls looking right now, listening to you that, see that you were able to be successful through your journey and want to take the same route that you have taken, what did you learn through your route of to get to where you are that you would advise other young professionals like yourself?
Be kind to yourself. I think there's always this such huge pressure to be perfect when like none of us are perfect. And I think, like obviously like social media perpetuates that because you don't want to show your failures. It's like your Instagram is a highlight reel of your life, but like to yourself, like being kind and understanding like failure is completely normal. And even if this person doesn't tell you they're a failure, they failed because it's part of the human condition. So like, I think a lot of the stress that I felt during school was to be perfect. Like I needed to put this facade that I could handle working and going to school and, all of this, and I don't crack. And then when I did crack, it was like, awful. But yeah, I would just say be kind to yourself, believe in yourself, trust yourself, because a lot of times people don't always have the nicest things to say. But if you believe in you, then what does it matter what someone else has to say? And enjoy the ride, because I think the last 10 years went by, and I can't tell you really one year from the other, because I was just so focused on getting done that I didn't enjoy the ride. I didn't enjoy being a student. I didn't enjoy being in clinical. I didn't enjoy it. I just put my head down and went forward. And I know that that's part of getting the work done, but in there sometimes enjoy the ride,
Yep.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of great points, because I personally think American culture, we've adopted this grind culture, and to me it's very unhealthy and unrealistic. I work for a global organization now, and I work with people from across the world. And one of the things that I've been getting is when it's time to take a break, when it's time to not work, it is time to not work. And I feel like Americans, they look down on you if you take time for yourself. You're branded as not as hardworking. So I think you made a lot of very valid points, and I'm glad somebody is looking at it the same way. Just want to allude to something. So where do you see yourself professionally in 5 years, as well as personally?
So,
do you see yourself in the same role, or do you want to switch, or you're not sure? Too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell, honestly. I hope so. I hope that this is the end of the road for me in terms of changing specialties and things like that. I think trauma is pretty amazing. So I hope that this is the end for me. I think that in 5 years, I'd like though to have a bigger role in mentorship, because I think it's really important. I'm like all about the kids. I love the kids, and having grown up in the situation that I did, and then coming out of that, I would love to work with kids, with teens, who have like a more difficult upbringing, and be a mentor, because I know that for me, that was the difference, that like I always had someone to kind of like look up to, or someone always telling me like education's the key. You need to, you need to get up. You got to do this, I think that was, the deciding factor for me, becoming an educated person versus going a different route. So in the next 5 years, I'd like to do a lot more with mentorship, and giving back to the community, because I think that I've gotten a great opportunity to represent my community. So I just want to work more with them. And then like personally, I just want to travel. I really I really want to travel.
Can you speak on the topic of like judging a book by its cover? Have you ever experienced like being judged and being judged on the wrong, or just, for example, for myself, like you would look at me, you would never think that I'm a music producer. I produce music. Like you would never think that you're judging a book by its cover, you're putting a label on it. Have you ever experienced that? And if so, can you speak on like the importance of not judging a book by its cover?
Yeah. I think like this entire experience, right? So like I'm a nurse practitioner and I have a doctorate degree. And then like, but little do you know that I was a custodian, So like now I have this great like position and title, but underneath that I was a custodian. And I think, many times I've experienced judging a book by its cover. So my hospital, we're color coded. So nurses are a certain color, nurses aides, environmental, blah, blah, blah. You don't know how many times, and I'm not going to say why, because I don't know why. You don't know how many times I've been confused for a CNA. Although I have blue and every other nurse has blue, I've been confused as a CNA. And I'm not going to go into why, because I didn't ask the person and I don't want to assume, but I could imagine why. And people judge you and think that maybe it's because I look young. I look too young to have the amount of education that I do. But then just ask, like if you don't know what my role is, just ask like, oh, who are you? Or like, like, what are you doing here? Don't call me the CNA. When, I mean, like, I would think, obviously I'm not. Every other nurse for the last 2 weeks has had blue on. But when I come in the room, now I'm the CNA. I don't know, like, it's unfortunate, but it's, and then it's like, for me, I also have to, make sure that I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? And like with my patients that, okay, this person came in for a gunshot wound. That doesn't mean that they're a gang member. That doesn't mean that they looked for this situation. Like, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I need to take this person for face value. So I think, it's kind of I don't need to judge people and people don't need to judge me, but it happens. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And you alluded to earlier, you're really big on mentorship. So myself and Nima as well, we have a mentorship program. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is being able to have the minority community be able to get opportunities that others don't. Because I mean, let's just be completely blunt. There's a disparity between the opportunities that minorities have versus the majority of the population. And so what do you think we can do at a grassroots level, at a lower educational level, to make sure that minorities have equal representation, equal opportunities to be able to get to the places that you're at and that we're trying to get to?
Mm-hmm. I think there's two things. One, telling your story. So people need to know that where you came from, because sometimes you could be like embarrassed, right? Like, oh, I came from the projects and blah, blah, blah. Or, like a single parent home, or my mom was a drug addict, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's embarrassing. But like coming to grasp with that so that you can share your story, because there's a kid out there who's going through the same thing that you went through. And then if you say, hey, I grew up in poverty, I, lived in the projects. Sometimes I didn't know what I was going to eat the next day. It resonates. Like that kid will say like, holy crap, like I'm not the only one that's going through this. So I think it's so important for all of us to share our stories, because you don't know. That's why we have like the power of like a voice to speak, so people can, because again, it's like reading a book by judging a book by its cover. If I look at you, I don't know where you come from. I'm thinking, okay, like he's about to be a pharmacist, like, oh, he must have money, his parents must be like great, he must have a great support system. But that might not be the case unless you tell me. So sharing our stories, and then to going back to the communities we come from. So many times we like make it big and then we leave the hood, and it's like, we got to go back. Like, I'm not telling you to live in the same project you lived in when you were a child, but I'm saying that if you made it, you need to share your story with the people who grew up in the same spot, so that they can see, because they don't know it's possible. Because if you grow up in those circumstances, you live in a bubble of what you can achieve, because you look left and you look right, and this is what people are doing. But if you, as someone who's successful, comes back to the hood and you show the kids, like, listen, like I have this nice car and this nice jewelry and nice clothes, and this is what I did, then they're like, oh, okay, so then that's an option for me too. Because if this person did it, so can I, so those are the two things that I think that are so important for our communities, like sharing our stories and then going back, like it's kind of like with the vice president now. For me as a woman of color, it was so empowering, because it's like, oh my God, like if I wanted to be a vice president, I could do that. Like it's whatever I want to do, I can do it, because there's someone who looks kind of sort of like me in a position of power. So I think that can be represented to like us. Like if you go back to your community, there's going to be a little kid that's like, oh shoot, he looks like me, I can do this. So yeah.
What was the most important thing that you learned in your life, and how was your life before you learned this thing and after?
sorry, just a second. It's a saying in Spanish. I just have to translate it. 1 second. Okay. Okay.
Just say it in Spanish and then say it in English.
We'll put subtitles.
This too shall pass. When I learned that bad times come and go, and I really understood that no matter how long a bad time is, it has to end. My life changed, because then I had hope. A lot of the times I think we lose hope because we're just like, oh, this is awful. It's never going to be over. I'm not going to make it through, blah, blah, blah. But then if you have the understanding that this too shall pass, like this is going to be all right. I think it also teaches you, like, even in the fight, like when you're in the hard time, to kind of like hunker down, and maybe like push into the bad time, because you know that like if you push into it, you're gonna make it through. It was just life changing. When I had that epiphany, it was, life has never been the same.
Awesome.
And I have to ask, your hair looks great. Do you want to give your hairstylist a shout out? Do you do your own hair? Like, I have to ask these questions.
No, this was me, so shout out to me.
Okay. No, but on a serious note, so do you see yourself, working with community organizations or different universities, or what is your plan? Because it seems like you're very passionate about the mentorship role. Where are you starting, or has anybody reached out to you, or are you going to work with hourinvite? What's the plan?
Mm-hmm. I will work with hourinvite. That sounds like a great idea. Yeah. I think, I haven't come up with a solid plan. I really haven't, because there's so much that I want to do. I guess in a perfect world, what I would love to do is start a program to teach kids what they don't get taught in school. Teaching
everything,
kids, like teaching kids finances and mental health, how to balance a checkbook. Well, those don't exist anymore, but you guys know what I mean. Yeah.
This is the checkbook.
Yes. Yep. Professional etiquette, because I know for myself, when I came into the professional atmosphere, because even how conflict resolution, that was one thing that I really, really, really had to learn, because how I would resolve a conflict isn't the way that professionally you resolve it. So like a program like that to teach kids, teach kids those things, so that when they go out into the real world, they have this little arsenal to fight against the world. Because I think the problem, especially in the minority communities, is lack of knowledge and lack of resources, not lack of intelligence. Because if you have a tank of gas but no car to put it in, that gas is worthless. So the same thing with kids and the potential they have. They can have potential until they're blue in the face, but if they don't have resources. So again, I went on a tangent. The thing that I would like to do in a perfect world would be to develop a program to teach kids those things.
Yeah, we'll be in contact.
Ideal.
So I want to end it up on a fun question that we always ask all our guests. So if we were to go back to undergrad and high school, and we were to speak to your best friend and your the closest professor that you had, and we were like, hey, who was Jaines? What would they say?
If we went back to high school and asked my best friend or teacher who I was, what they would say?
Yep.
Wow, that's a really good question. I think, they would say that I was smart and I had a lot of potential. But I think maybe on a negative that I might due to kind of like a lack of self-confidence, may miss opportunities because I didn't believe in myself. Because I think at that time I didn't. So I think, you know what? I'll have to ask my best friend, because my best friend from high school is still my best
Call her
friend.
right now. Call her right now. Let's find out.
I think they would say that I was smart and I was a good person and I had a lot of potential, but that like my lack of confidence could serve as a barrier to my progress. Because at that time, like, I didn't know any, a kid, and I didn't know much.
Yeah.
And I was very timid, very, very timid. So I think that, they would say that that would have been a barrier to my success.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. I'm sure you're really, really busy. You know, you got CNN to deal with, MSNBC, and but we want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us, and we appreciate you giving us the time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was incredible. Thank you.
No problem. And thank you to everyone that tuned in. My name is Nima.
My name is Aaron.
And thank you for accepting our invite.